So today it's time for Björk's next album I'm going to do. This one is called Volta. It's her sixth in her discography. I've done every album now until this point. I've listened to those so many times right now. Vespertine is my favorite so far. It's just so beautiful. One of the best, maybe the best art pop album I've ever heard. It's just so diverse, all of our discography, as we went through all of them right now. But I also listened to Vertebrae, if you haven't known, but that one got like blocked in Canada and USA. So last we listened to Medulla, which was a very different album, going into just like human mouth sounds, and just like every sound we can do with our just voice. And going to a cappella and just experimental stuff and art pop in general was really interesting, and was very different, and an approach that nobody really would try, but she did because it's Björk. What do you expect? So I'm really interested how she moves on from there. Well, I know a couple of things. Also, like in one review, I think it was at Vespertine, where this one track a little bit reminded me of Timbaland, and I was like talking about like, well, this is so dumb. I don't know why, but this kind of like reminds me of a Timbaland beat from like the 2000s. And then there was like people in the comments, yo, he is a co-producer at Volta, and I was like, huh, that's really weird, but well, here we are, I guess, and let's just like read through this right here. Volta is a seventh studio album by Icelandic singer Björk, released in May 2007. It was produced by Björk, Mark Bell, Timbaland, and Danya. I don't know who Mark Bell and Danya is. The following was accidentally made available on the UK iTunes Store at midnight on April 23rd, 2007, for a total of 6 hours, 2 weeks before the album's official release date. This led to the album being leaked online the following day. It has been certified silver in the United Kingdom. This album attracted attention due to the inclusion of a tracks produced by R&B record producer Timbaland. So I was really interested by how like this how Timbaland really was involved in this album in that kind of sense. But I mean, in the early 2000s, he was very, very popular, going on with like with many artists in the pop direction, and was a very well known and beloved producer, right? So and right here, the album was highly acclaimed on its initial release and continues to be praised by critics. That was something I was wondering about, because some people don't really like this album, but there are also a lot of people who like this album, and some that just like on this one. I'm wondering how I will think about this album. 9 weeks number one on Billboard's top electronic albums. Alright. The lead single of Intruders. Alright. Björk went on an 18-month tour in support of the album. That's long, which was the first tour in 4 years. That's really long. Okay, using the names just come from a newspaper. I'm just like really interested how this one here is the next really conventional album, with maybe some interesting new parts since Vespertine, which was like now 6 years ago from this one right here. And she got bored with just like music and stuff. And so she did Medulla. So I'm now really interested how this one will turn out right here, 6 years after Vespertine. And so yeah, so I guess we should just jump right into this album. We got 10 tracks. It's 50-minute album, 51-minute album, which is pretty long contrast. Like every track is like 5 minutes, about 5 minutes, which is interesting. So there's a lot of time put in each of these tracks. Maybe it's going to be dense, maybe not. We'll see that. So let's jump right into it. And now to the first track, which is called Earth Intruders. Let's go. really intense and experimental track going onto this one, but I kind of like thought about like maybe this is going to be something like electronic experimental stuff into that. So I was getting that, but right here, I was thinking about like, does Volta mean voltage or just like energy or something like that? Something like heavy. That would be interesting. The beat is really all over the place. There's some like harsh synthetics going into this one, some choirs in the back that maybe are synths. Would be interesting if they are not. Her singing is like this typical two-sided, where sometimes she's like really close to the microphone and like kind of has this hushy and hushing singing stuff coming into this one, and it's a little bit more lo-fi, and then she has those beautiful parts with her singing. And I always thought about like how the dance part of like Björk sometimes makes sense, but sometimes really not that much. But right here, I think that it has some really interesting sides. For example, those percussion drums are amazing. Those synths sometimes are a little bit, to be honest. But I like those really like harsh ones right here. They are pretty nice coming into this one and give them some really energy. But yeah, let's move on.
Intruders, we are the sharpshooters, buckled parachuters, necessary this turmoil out there, carnage, rambling. What is to those? We are the earth's intruders, melody with tricks and magic.
But the outro is a little bit goofy like this cover, to be honest. I don't know what this cover even is. It looks like a bottle, some big feet, and it's like a weird doll in there. And it's kind of like cropped up in this little picture. It's really weird. And also that ant right there, does she wanted to use them as braces? But we had some like ocean waves and stuff, but I don't know why. Why did she do that in that track? Well, maybe because like there are some like earth intruders and muddy with tricks and branches, and they come with like on the ships or something. I don't know. Really weird track, but to be honest, there are a lot of parts that I really like. Those jungle beats, like the percussion on that one is amazing. It's just like really fun and rhythmic, but like the synths sometimes are a little bit too weird, and also the outro was way too goofy with like 2 minutes of like ship horns. But still, it's an alright track. I'm feeling a 7 on that one. So let's move on with the next track, which is called Wanderlust. Let's jump right into it.
Seem too keen on God, I cannot stomach their rights and wrongs. I have floating Wanderlust, relentlessly craving wanderlust.
It's a really dense track, but also really feeling unconnected. It's a little bit like a Fossora track with like getting some classical instrument there, like these trumpets and horns in here, which is really nice approach, but I think she does that a little bit better on some tracks on Fossora, for example. Right here, it's really weird with those really abstract drums, but for me personally, it feels a little bit unconnected. There's something not quite finished here, or it's not harmonized. It's like she wants to try something really different, and it's not really fully realized or something. She does that really nicely on Fossora. There were a couple of tracks that were like this, but sometimes she also uses some other different instruments on there. But also Fossora goes into like every little thing she tried before that in her discography. But right here, I think it feels a little bit too weird, and there's like way too many different ideas flowing into this one, and there's a kind of like a little bit of a lacking in all the instrumentations, because you have these beats, and sometimes like some harsh synthetic bass that maybe sounds nice and like really big, but not really making for me. And then there are these horns, but nothing is in between that, so there is a kind of like an emptiness, if you get what I mean. But yeah, I still think that kind of the horns make sense in the songwriting, and moving on to this kind of like this energy, like I want to move, I want to wander, and embrace some like treasurements and stuff, and found new things, and it's some really interesting songwriting, also like Wanderlust, from island to island, united in movement, and things like that is pretty cool, but the sound is not really making for me right here.
Until you get to the core, united in movement, wonderful. I enjoy it with you. Can you spot a pattern?
Well, I don't think any of my opinions really changed on that track, but I gotta tell you that I like the compositions of these trumpets, and they sound really triumphant in a way, and there's such a huge energy about them that I enjoyed those. But besides that, I was talking about nothing really that much that really grabbed me, to be honest, so I'm feeling a 5 on this track. So let's move on with the next track, which is called The Dull Flame of the Dire. Let's jump right into it.
There's splendid sparkling fire.
When suddenly you raise them so, to cast a swift embracing glance,
Like lightning flashing in the sky. I love your eyes, my dear. They're splendid, sparkling fire. Suddenly
I don't know about you, but if you're wondering, I'm just waiting for something like to evolve on this track really. Like there are these really silent drums in the back of these kicks that are really silently played. And I mean, yeah, there are always like these horns like on the last track. And first we also had the feature who's called Anoni or Arnoni, I'm not really sure. Which makes this track a little bit different in sound, but he has an interesting voice, but it doesn't really match the vibe of this track really for me. Um, but I like how really Björk really stretches her voice in the way that the trumpets are playing, um, which is really interesting going into this songwriting because this one is really slow from the orchestral point while the kicks are pretty fast. But that also makes it really uh, disconnected. Like all these drums that we had so far and the electronics that are not really on this track, for example, but they were on the first track. But now also the orchestrations don't really match up to each other that well. Well, maybe they are with kind of like tempo, but it just really doesn't make it for me because like these two are so skeletal and really doesn't make any sense in the tempo usage right here. Right there, the first track is my favorite so far, but let's see if there's something evolving. This is, by the way, the longest track of this album.
When suddenly you raise them so to cast a swift embracing glance like lightning flashing in the sky. But there's a child that's greater still when my love's eyes when suddenly you raise them so.
My favorite part of this album so far is these choruses right here where they sing together and really harmonizes really well because Björk is really talented and in layering vocals, and right here it really works together with Anoni. Um, he's like a member of a band. I read that. I don't know the Johnsons, but he has an interesting voice. But just for me and my feelings, it doesn't really match up with Björk. Um, but I mean, in my reactions and reviews, I always like want to talk about if I don't really am a fan of a track because I don't want to be like fake or anything, if you know what I mean. And right here, I'm not a big fan of this track, but there is a minute left and a half, so let's see how this ends up. Well, then at the end, the drums double up in a double time, which really nothing adds that much to any of these compositions or really the track, in my opinion. Songwriting, talking about like a dull flame of desire and stuff like that. I couldn't I didn't know really what to begin with that track because it's really it's always like the same on this track from the lyrics, and that to make it like a 7.5 minute track is a little bit too much in my opinion, because there was no progression really to begin with, and like the last 45 seconds maybe had like some build up with like a double time drum, and it's not really that much in my opinion. But I mean, maybe I can see like why people would like that track coming into like those compositions. And I mean, yes, experimental going into things like that. And I like the approach of Björk, but it's not like really mine right here. So let's move on to the next track, which is called Innocence, the fourth track.
Scared of break without time. That's real life. Yeah, that I never. I'm meaning the thrill of. Yeah, no greatly joy with courage. It can flourish. That's real life. Yeah, that I never. I'm meeting the thrill of fear. No greatly joy without you can do anything.
Pretty interesting track going into like only electronics right now. There are no other instruments, which is an interesting move. And she haven't done that on this album so far. Maybe at Earth Intruders, but that one is a little bit different. And this approach right here is a little bit more straightforward into going like on full of all the sides of electronics. And there's some like glitch aspects to this one, like those glitchy, weird little noises that I can't really explain in the back that are like always anywhere, and then there are like these heads and percussion. No harsh beats right now, or not any harsh bass or something. And then we have the beautiful voice by Björk, and it kind of like adds up to those like really weird grating synths that I kind of like. Pretty interesting track. Let's move on.
My Sally and Stitchy. Let's open up. Fearless, innocence roared, still amazes, untouchable. Innocence, it is still here, but in different places.
I kind of like this track. This one was a little bit better than most of these tracks so far. I liked Earth Intruders, but this one is also like on the same page as that one. I still would like love to see a little bit more instrumentation and diversiveness right here, but still, it's alright. I'm feeling a 7 on that one. The lyrics are pretty cool, and the kind of songwriting that goes into some things we also had before. I don't know if there's a concept something. If there is a concept, I'm missing it. But yeah, let's move on with the next track, which is called "I See Who You Are." Let's go.
And the muscles I see who you are now, and when you'll get older later, I will see the same girl. And afterwards, when you and I have become corpses, let's celebrate now.
This track right here is beautiful. I like this one. The instrumentation is really interesting, experimental, and something really new right here that I've never heard before. I like the transition from the previous track, Innocence, at the end where it goes into those Japanese koto right here, and they sound really good. And I like the way that there are some really like Asian instrumentation right here that gives also a really different flavor from going into like cultural differences and stuff right here, which is really amazing. And I love the sound of these. Like those are really good, really well mixed, and they're all over the place. And also like the ambience kind of at the beginning, they kind of like reminds me of some stuff we had before on albums like Vespertine, with some more ambient tracks on that one, or for example also Homogenic and different things like that. And I really like those. Those sounds really amazing, and I love when she does tracks like this right here. This is good. So yeah. Also the songwriting probably goes into her daughter and stuff. For example, in Afterwards Late is a century when you and I have become corpses. And then let's celebrate now all this flesh on our bones. Like you have to be happy when you're alive and stuff, and going to that and enjoy every bit of it and stuff like that, and going to songwriting, which is pretty beautiful. And I like this track.
Let's celebrate now. All this flesh on our bones. Let me push you up against me tightly. Let's. I see
Yes, this was a beautiful track. Also, beautiful instrumentation at the end with some pads coming in there, and her voices gets more like stretched up, which was a beautiful turn right there. And I loved that track. That one was beautiful, and I give that one a 9. That's a beautiful track. Yeah, I like to see this. I like to see that. So let's move on to the next track, which is called Vertebrae, I don't know how that's pronounced, sorry. Vertebrae by Vertebrae. There we go. Let's move on.
the toe and the spine straight and erect, hungry and curious, up on the toe, look to lose face, got down on her knees. The beast is back on 4 legs. Satyr clock by Vertebrae, up on the toe. Again, filled with steam for months, for years. Same old cloud, claustrophobic.
Pretty interesting track with all these horn samples, but right here on this track, I actually think that they're pretty well connected, while the horns or the trumpets are not really that impressive in the orchestration, but I just really think that it really suits the pretty lo-fi and trip-hop like beat on this one, or even micro beat like we had on Vespertine and that kind of sound. While there is no really like some minimalistic textures and stuff, or some minimalistic beats, just like floating around anywhere and stuff, I think that this track kind of has something to it, like those really aggressive singing on this one, going with those like heavy tones Björk always does. It's beautiful, and yeah, I think that this also is a pretty good track.
I
Also, there are some like themes that sometimes like come back. For example, the beast is something that often occurs in this track as an idea, and also some other things like talking about nature, and also like we had some old train sounds before. I talked about that. Pretty interesting track. Very different, but I like the approach on this one. And I'm feeling something between a 7 and an 8 on this one. Pretty good. So let's move on with the next track, which is called Pneumonia. Pneumonia, right? It's called Pneumonia. Let's go.
And your lungs, they're mourning. TB style, all the stillborn love that could have happened. All the moments you should have embraced. All the moments you should have known. Get over that sorrow, girl. Get over.
Really good transition also there, but the track is very, very, very silent. There's even some field recordings of just rain sounds and just like some ambience going on, maybe at a like rainy street or something like that. When I was listening to that, from the songwriting wise, I thought it was pretty interesting, but nothing really that hit me that much. I don't know if it should. Um, for example, the third verse would be the hugest come for the hugest come for. Then you're just crying after all to not want them urines around anymore. After like the crime and stuff, it's okay. And then before that, the first verse goes also, I know how you simply surrender too high. There are so many little parts on this one that I thought were interesting, but I don't really know what to do with it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I gotta tell you that I like just to listen to the track in a more basic way, just because it was like some beautiful horns on this one. I read that was some like French horns. It's pretty cool. You don't really hear them that often, to be honest. Also not in like music like this, to be honest. It's also a really weird place to put a track like that, while the track list so far was like pretty skeletal, straightforward, maybe sometimes even noisy. But yeah, I think it's pretty interesting how they put that in there. And I gotta tell you, this album is very challenging and to just listen to it in that way, because this is just like so all over the place, skeletal, and you have to like pick on these just like very small bones right here. That's quite challenging. We'll see if I maybe like will grow on this a little bit more in like the couple of days next couple of days, but still, I gotta tell you, pretty alright. So let's move on to the 8th track, which is called Hope. Also really good transition to the next track right here.
Made to look pregnant, manages to kill her target or not. What's the lesson? Or dies in vain. Nature has fixed no limits on our hopes. Oh, what's the lesson? Of here's my version of it. Internal whirlwinds I have fostered since childhood. Well, I don't care. Love to be proven
Well, Hope kind of like moves on where we left on I See Who You Are, but there are like many parts where it's kind of like the same formula, just with some more abstract beats, like except like especially these kicks that are really like weirdly stereoized and all over the place. That's kind of like a nice way to put that, and but the songwriting and stuff, it's interesting how she puts that into the lyrics right here. But I've got to be honest, I don't really get the point. Like, what is the point she wants to get across with, for example, this first verse? What's the lesser of two evils if she kills them or dies in vain? And then nature has fixed no limits on our hope. Or what's the lesser of two evils? If her bump was fake or if it was real. Like, is she talking about like this pregnant woman who is who with that? I don't know if I'm even allowed to talk about that on YouTube. But well, to be honest, it's pretty interesting how she gets it into this track, but I don't really get what she really means with getting a pregnant woman into this and to point of getting across there. I don't know what she really wants to do with this, or is it like something like some social or political commentary or something? I'm not really sure, but I don't really want to go into this one without really knowing in that kind of sense, if you know what I mean. But yeah, and also like if they use a beat like that and then these instruments, but then it's about something like this, it feels so unconnected. Like you have some Asian samples and then you have this like Timbaland beat and talking about like literally this. I don't get it. But let's move on to the next track, to the next track, which is called Declare Independence.
Declare independence. Don't let them do that to you. Declare independence. Don't let them do that to you. Don't let them do that to you. Start your own currency. Make your own stamp. Make your own flag. Make your own flag. Make your own flag. flag. Raise your flag. Raise your flag. Damn colonists. Ignore their patronizing. Cheer up their blindfold. Open their eyes. Declare independence. Don't let them do that to you. Declare independence. Don't let them do that to you. Don't let them do that to you. Declare independence. Don't let them do that to you. Raise the flag.
Yes, that was a really hard track. This goes with some like really harsh synthetic synths right there. That has this like really grating sound, like in this like this distortion compression, which is really intense, and it's has this also this very hard beat coming later. Going to be honest with you, the lyrics not really make it for me, to be honest. Also right here again, but I still think that this track is a banger and it's harsh. It's going hard, and I really enjoyed listening to that one because it was so all over the place, and it really punches you in the face with that track. While I think in sequencing that track to put in between like Hope and the last track is a little bit of a bold move, to be honest, but still, yeah, that track is an 8. So let's see how this album closes off with the 10th track, which is called My Juvenile. Let's go.
Thank you for again to get to be able to send worms, to send worms. Perhaps I set you too free, too fast, too young.
But the intentions were pure. But the intentions were pure. This is an offer to better the last let go. This is an offer to better the last let go.
The intentions were pure. My juvenile.
So yeah, that was the last track, My Juvenile. That one goes also in those Asian string plugs. There could be like kotos. I don't really know those instruments from those countries, to be honest. But it's an even more skeletal one than, for example, Vertebrae, and the 6th track, and not the 6th track. They were a little bit like the 8th track, Hope, and the 5th track, I See Who You Are, with those Asian kind of like string plugs coming into this one. But it was even more skeletal, and I don't really know why she's using so less instruments, while the track before that was such a hard pumping track. I don't really get the like the power in between these tracks, where sometimes it's just so skeletal that really there's not really that much, and then you just like get your ears blown out by so really harsh like tracks. I don't really get it. Maybe I should see this album more as a kaleidoscope album, where I should go into every track with another like feeling. But in my opinion, is just like really weird, because sometimes they even like some themes that reoccur through the lyrics and the songwriting. But um, well, I'm not sure. But really, right here, I thought this last track was not something I would really hope to end like a Björk album, because like every Björk album really ended up with like some like huge tracks or something that you can be like very subtle with beautifully. But right here, I'm a little bit split on. But yeah, that was kind of like the album. I will give it some further listens, and then I will give you some extra thoughts. And so yeah, see you then. So here we are with some extra thoughts for Björk's album Volta, her 2007 album. I listened to this album 2 more times. One time was like some really deep dive into the lyrics. If you hear my voice is a little bit because I'm a little bit ill, but still it's alright. But yeah, and I did another listen, like just going to straight into the music and listening to it. So 2 different listens, and I got 2 very different kind of experiences. First time I'm going to do it was only the sound. Just the sound. There are some parts in this album where I enjoy just listening to the sound. For example, like at the from the fifth way up to the eighth track, it's like perfect flowing, beautiful sound, and you can really get into it. Also, the first 3 tracks, for example, with just the sound, it's listenable. It's really gets you into a nice feeling. The horns and orchestrations are nice, and also the electronic elements are also pretty cool, mostly. But if you go into like also into the like vocals and stuff, and takes it all into a part with also the lyrics, this album just doesn't work for me. I really wish it would be like that, but there were some slower moments, for example, on this album where the vocals are like in sync, or sometimes like also in my review I think I told you like yeah, I like the I kind of like how the vocals really are powerful and stuff. Mostly they're not in sync at all with the instruments, and I love her voice. Don't misunderstand, but it's just not connected to the music itself, to the instrumentals. And there are also a lot of mixes that are just like really messed up. While I think that the ninth track, Declare Dependence, is a pretty hard going track, and I enjoyed that one because it's just like so messed up with those like rating sounds, it's just not mixed at all. Also for the track at the beginning, where I have some like electronic tracks, for example, together with Timbaland, sometimes there are some like really driven drums and just like all over and over and over. But then at the end, for example, at the third track, the Dull Flame, even like there is some clipping on those drums that it really doesn't work, and it's like not really well mixed, and often just like maybe thrown in there. I don't really know how the production, also post-production, was on this album, but I can really hate this album for what it is, if you know what I mean. I just don't really get warm with it. I can understand if some people like these experimental aspects, and that sometimes the music is not even really that connected, or if you like just see it in like very little minimalistic ways, you just like pick the instrumentals apart and then the lyrics and then the vocals, and then it could make sense. But if you see it all in like one big thing, for me it doesn't work, and I can't see if anyone thinks like, yeah, this makes sense. I just don't see it. But also there are some like guest vocals that I think are not really making it for me. For example, I can't really pronounce his name, I'm sorry, but the one guy from the band who appears on the last track, for example, wasn't really like a nice addition to it. He really didn't put anything to the table vocally or lyrically, in my opinion. There are some stories and themes going to the lyrics, but for me it just like doesn't really make sense often, or I just maybe don't get it. Sometimes I click on those annotations on Genius, but going to be honest, most of these are not really annotated or reviewed or something, and I don't really often agree with those, because I don't know, maybe it's just like the language barrier or something. I don't get it, but yeah, I don't know. This one really didn't make it for me, but still, heads up, there are a lot of other Björk albums, and I'm still going to move on and listen to all the others. And I mean, I liked some tracks. I loved the first track of Intruders. It's a fun track. I See Who You Are is my favorite track of this album. That one really got me with those like Asian instrumentals, and there are all the other aspects to that with Timbaland really makes sense and is a nice addition. Also the ninth track, Decline Dependence, while the mix is not perfect for me, it's still a banger. So yeah, I wanted to put that out right there, and on this album I'm feeling a light to decent 5. So see you on the next album. The next one is, I think, going to be Biophilia. Yeah, it's going to be Biophilia. And so yeah, we'll see what that album got for us. See you then.